Sexism. It sucks. But don't tell that to third-wave feminists, who will utter the most anti-male ideas and remarks to advance gender equality for women, regardless of how confusing that may seem. Such instances include screaming men are trash, that they don't face sexism, and advocating for affirmative action that prioritizes women over men in hiring and education, even though feminism is meant to be the definition of gender equality. But what annoying feminist argument are we going to respond to today? That the male suicide rate is attributable to the patriarchy? That free speech is bigoted and limits the choices of women and even minorities? That you can't joke about serious issues like rape, regardless of the context or intent? No. This misogynistic belief held by some radical feminists is that if the world was ruled by women rather than men, then there would be no war or at least less wars. This rather common talking point was seemingly espoused by actor Robert Downey Jr, who is most known for playing Iron Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Although I'm not sure if Downey was being sarcastic in the clip, or being serious due to his tone. Maybe it's a joke that the interviewer was in on too. Regardless, Hollywood and the media are a relatively left-leaning place, so it wouldn't be surprising if he actually meant it. Regardless, I would like to take a stab at this. A more notable commentator, I'm probably going to butcher this, Amala Ekpunobi from PragerU made a response to Downey and had some solid argumentation. I would recommend her and her video, since unlike most conservative commentators, she often thinks through her positions, especially on the cultural front. Her video alone would be enough in debunking this feminist talking point, but I thought I would change it up a little rather than regurgitating Amala's response by putting a more empirical spin on things.
I was curious if you took away any commentary on patriarchy and war.
Men start wars and the entire planet should be a matriarchy. But I've never changed position on that.
So you already had that going into this.
Well, this was just a triple confirmation.
Well, just because women are generally more compassionate or nurturing doesn't mean it would translate in a leadership or military role. After all, we live in the real world, and leaders, whether man or woman, need to think of how war may hurt the state or nation they are leading. And being too appeasing to enemy states could hurt their nation. I mean, would we prefer if a female leader capitulated to Adolf Hitler back in World War II just to bring about world peace? Neville Chamberlain obviously learnt that lesson the hard way, as well as the millions of Holocaust victims. But then you may say, but Hitler was a man. Women wouldn't have to respond violently if men weren't leading the world. But even so, it is sexist to assume that women can't be aggressive or engage in military conflict. Besides, we know women leading wouldn't definitely lead to peace, since female leaders such as UK Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher engaged in conflicts such as the Falklands War. Then again, feminists may switch up the argument and retort that the greater presence of female leaders would lead to greater world peace, at least in general. They support this by pointing out how the world has gotten more peaceful over the past century, and this rising peace within democracies has been attributed to increasing female leadership over the years. But I'd argue that greater liberalization of various states led to both increasing peace and female representation instead of female representation causing peace. Not to mention that women may instead disproportionately come to power in times of peace. If only there was a study that answered whether female leaders generally led to greater peace, particularly by analysing a less peaceful period, like say from 1480 to 1913. Oh wait, there is one study that has managed to do this, but why such dates? Well, the study's researchers start at 1480 because this is the first year where war data is available, and the study ends at 1913 because monarchs had limited power around World War I. The diminishing power of monarchs is important, since these royals would be the male and female leaders deciding the military direction of their respective countries at a time when democracy and liberal institutions were limited. Hence, periods where nation-states or republics are not included, since the study is meant to compare male and female monarchs. The study covers 193 reigns in 18 European states, with 18% of these reigns being queens. So what were the results? Did vicious, sexist, bigoted, toxically masculine kings start like 99% of the wars or something? Well, no. In reality, when looking at these European queens and kings, states ruled by queens were 27% more likely to participate in interstate conflicts compared to states ruled by kings. So that is the empirical proof that more female leaders does not mean more peace. In fact, arguably the opposite. So should we go full Andrew Tate and complain that these brawls are too emotional and too violent to lead? Well, no. There are plenty of reasons to explain this disparity. And I know feminists would already point out that sexism of the past may have forced queens to be more aggressive in warfare, such as male heirs being preferred over female heirs when it came to succeeding the monarchy. But before I continue on, if you are interested or curious about shocking stats and data like this, please give a like as to help my video in the algorithm, and feel free to check out my other videos after you finish this one. Okay, now the first factor is that queens may have been able to engage in more conflicts because they had greater resources / state capacity in the form of two factors. First, as female military leaders were seen as a taboo at the time, kings were very unlikely to have female spouses that ran the military, compared to queens who were way more likely to have male spouses that ran the military. These male military spouses would have been better able to secure more military alliances. Second, the male spouses could help the queen's rule, which wouldn't be the case with a king, such as the male spouse being in charge of military and economic reforms. Basically, there would be two monarchs overseeing state affairs. There were many cases of queens placing their male spouses in power, such as Queen Dona Maria II of Portugal appointing her husband Prince Augustus Francis Anthony as chief of the army. These marriages are probably even more beneficial when you realize that monarchs may have married royals from other nations to cement alliances. It has been argued that queens are perceived as weak targets, so will more likely be attacked, which justifies the higher war participation. This line of thinking would be more preferred by feminists. Among married monarchs, queens were more likely to fight as aggressors than kings, while among unmarried monarchs, queens whose state was attacked were more likely than kings to fight in wars. The latter shows that queens may be targeted if they were unmarried, but not if they were married. The results associated with the married queens support the idea that queens having male spouses increases state capacity to pursue more aggressive war policies. So feminists may be partially right about queens when it comes to defensive engagements, but not when it comes to offensive engagements. There may be other sexist factors that feminists believe that the study hasn't taken into account, so let's go through them. Argument 1. If there is a lack of a male heir, it can signal uncertainty and lead to conflict. So a queen is more likely to inherit an unstable environment, which increases aggression. But even then, the coefficient was insignificant, meaning there's not much of a link between the aggression of queens and a lack of male heirs. Argument 2. If royal families had a lot of children, then there's a higher chance of the previous monarch having a sister, and hence a higher chance of the current monarch being a queen. Otherwise, the likelihood of a queen is low, due to the bias for male heirs. However, this means that having a queen as the current monarch increases the number of siblings, and hence the number of contenders for the throne. This situation would be ripe for instability and more conflicts for the queen to deal with, and hence have to be more violent. Despite this argument, when accounting for the number of siblings and wars of succession, the aggressive effect of queens is still preserved. Argument 3. Queens may be more combative, because they may more likely need to signal strength than their male counterpart, and hence engage in conflict to do so. But this signaling would usually occur in the monarch's much earlier years if this were true. So we would expect greater warring behavior at this time, but this doesn't seem to be the case. Argument 4. Another argument is that female rulers were more likely influenced by male advisors, but if this were so, then this aggressive effect would be even greater among younger queens, since these types of monarchs would be more likely to be influenced by advisors, yet this aggression effect does not differ by age. Argument 5. Queens may have more likely had to face internal instability and had to be more confrontational to unify their state, but the presence of a queen did not increase the chance of a civil war, the unnatural death of a queen/monarch such as regicide, or the demise of a kingdom. So this idea doesn't really hold to scrutiny. Argument 6. It is possible that husbands may influence the aggressive military policy of queens. Nevertheless, the results are unaffected if we account for husband's influence or any military experience of the husband. After all, Isabella resisted Ferdinand when they clashed over important policy issues such as succession, despite Ferdinand's large role in her rule. The results are also unaffected by the age of the monarch, co-ruling, excluding any queen from the data, relatives fighting wars of succession, and needing to kill male siblings. If you are curious about the study or any further checks they did, I have linked it below in the description. So pretty much when you check for any so-called sexist factors that may unfairly make queens more aggressive or more moody if you're an Andrew Tate follower, there pretty much aren't any for that 400-year period, at least when not including queens needing to fight in self-defense due to being considered vulnerable targets. Queens also seem to be pretty successful, as queenly reigns were associated with greater territorial gain, although territory can be gained for reasons other than war. So the moral of this video is that we need more women leading, as their irrationality will lead to more war and bombings and dead kids. Obviously I am kidding, but that last part might get maliciously clipped. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if so, again please give a like. Comment as well, since it really helps my video in the YouTube algorithm, and subscribe for more videos responding to some of the dumbest arguments you've ever seen, as well as some really smart arguments. Thanks for watching, and see you later.